coaching is not an event. A lot of leaders treat it like an event, right? I coached Michael. Michael is better now. And it's like, no, Michael's a human being. So human beings are not light switches. David Sandler said, never practice in front of your buyer. And unfortunately, most sellers, that's what they do. If I went to a surgeon or a physiotherapist and say, hey, out of curiosity, like, how often do you practice the techniques? And like, oh, I did like a 1-day course like 10 years ago. And, I learned how to do the ART stimulation thing. So how about you hop up on the table?
For those who are a big fan of manual role plays, what could they change tomorrow to get more engagement?
So here's the number one thing for manual role plays.
Hello everyone, this is Michael Ocean, CEO at Sell Me This Pen. Today I'm super pumped because I got Hamish Knox on the call. And I was joking with Hamish before we hit record. It's like, I'm going to say this on the podcast. You always make me look bad because look at you, always dressed and sharp. But anyways, Hamish is the coach. So today we're going to talk about role plays and why they're important. And who can share, better than Hamish? He's an official Sandler trainer. There's a lot of things going on with Hamish. I don't want to say it because he can do the justice better. Hamish, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty fantastic, man. We got lots of super cool things going on at Sandler Calgary. I've got some introductions over to my partners over at STS Capital to create successful exits, and I'm just delighted that we get to hang out today because I remember when you first reached out to me about Sell Me This Pen when it was pretty much an idea, and to see how it's grown and scaled, man, just absolutely warms my heart. So thanks for having me here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Hamish, just tell us a little bit about your background. I want the audience just to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. So I used to be a journalist. So I started as a journalist when I was 16 years old. And then I went to the dark side, as the journalists say, of marketing and PR. Then I went to the really dark side and got into sales. And then, I sometimes I joke that I'm like a black hole now because I'm in sales, training, coaching, consulting. So I grew up in a village of 500 people in rural British Columbia, Canada. Very quickly moved out to Vancouver, the Vancouver area when I graduated high school because there wasn't a lot of opportunities for me to do what I wanted in the town I grew up in. Moved over to Calgary in 2003. Started with Sandler in 2011, and it have been growing and going ever since then. Yesterday, I was doing a workshop on QBRs with a group of account managers from a multi-billion-dollar commercial cleaning company, and I said to them, guys, I don't work. It doesn't feel like work. I love supporting my clients, getting them from where they are now to where they want to be. And usually it's beyond. One of the key questions that I ask a client after 6 months, maybe a year after we started working together is, hey, can you picture yourself before we started working together? And they said, yeah. I said, if you could go back and talk to that person, would they believe anything that you would tell them about how successful you are? And they're like, absolutely not. I said, great. then it's working.
All right, there you go. That's the way it's supposed to be, I guess, for everyone. Anyways, Hamish, look, we had a lot of topics, and you picked role plays. So I'm just curious, why role plays? Why does it matter?
So, number one reason is because the hardest 4 inches to move in our life is brain to mouth. So it's all well and good for us to watch a video, take a course, have our boss tell us to do something. And if it never changes how we think, talk, or act, it's pretty much useless. And David Sandler said, never practice in front of your buyer. And unfortunately, most sellers, that's what they do. And really, most leaders, that's the only chance they ever have. So when we're working with leaders, most of our work with leaders is actually role play. Like role playing a coaching call or role playing an interview or role playing like a PIP conversation, because typically leaders are practicing on their team members. And I don't know about you, but I tell my team the first time I say anything, it usually sucks. So if I don't have that practice, I'm probably going to unintentionally damage rapport with the person I'm talking to. So that's why role play is super, super critical.
Interesting. I know it's overused, but I like this sport analogy. So can you name any professional athletes out there? anyone that don't practice. Like I'm surprised like voice salespeople don't do it.
Amen, brother. Amen. And well, and even take it out of the sports world or the arts world, right? You think about musicians and artists are always practicing. Think about accountants, lawyers, doctors. Like if I went to a surgeon and or a physiotherapist, we'll just use something really easy, right? I went to a physiotherapist and I say, hey, out of curiosity, like how often do you practice the techniques? And like, oh, I did like a 1 day course like 10 years ago, and I learned how to do the ART stimulation thing. So how about you hop up on the table? I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna hop out the door. Like, thank you very much. I'm leaving.
That's pretty much it. Like, do you trust a surgeon to do an open heart, surgery if they never actually, practice it before? All right.
Exactly. But we're sending our people out saying, go sell stuff. And it's like, well, how do I do that?
And when the numbers are not, met, who's the first one to go? You're you as a rep. 100%. You're to blame.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you something, Hamish. Like these days, AI is obviously a big thing, and you helped us a lot. Like early on when we started selling the spend, we had many calls, and you were kind enough to give us a lot of feedback and help us, build this platform. And one of the areas that we are focusing on is obviously role plays. So you can have a conversation with AI buyers, and to your point, instead of burning leads and practicing on your clients, you can do it, before and get ready and rehearse, and then go on client calls. So based on your experience, looking at the market, because I consider you as an early adopter of technology, you got involved with us even 3 years ago. What do AI role play tools do very well today, and what's missing from these tools?
So what they do very well is they actually make the role plays happen, because one of the biggest challenges that I have when I'm talking to my clients about role play is I get we don't have time. Right. And none of us have time. We make time for things that are important. So when I have a sales manager or a sales leader say, I don't have time for that, it's code for, I don't think it's important to me. So having these AI tools available where a seller in the flow of their work, so they don't have to Slack or walk down the hall or whatever and go, hey, Michael, do you have 5 minutes so I can role play this thing before I go into buyer? They could just open up the AI tool and, okay, I'm role playing this. And so it actually gives the seller more opportunity to practice and enhance their skills. So again, they're not practicing in front of the buyer. So that's ultimately what the overall benefit of these AI tools is it actually gets done.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai.
So now we're going to be getting into hashtag not all AI role-playing tools, because when I say what lacks, someone's going to put up their hand and be like, I have that. It's like, okay, awesome. Great. You probably don't have 7 other things. So can we just dial back a little bit on the, I've got that feature. Awesome. We're talking, in general. So the what I've noticed with the AI tools is, and this is an early stage thing, they don't have a lot of simulations, right? They tend to be very I'm good at objections, or I'm good at pitches, or I'm good at fill in blank, and there's a good data set for that within that tool. So over time, what's going to happen, and what I hope is going to happen, is either clients will be uploading real calls, so we have reality, and the organizations behind these AIs are going to build out a greater data set of actual simulations. And that speaks to there are some role play scenarios that are really chatbots, and great. If you're selling consumer products and you do your work through chat or you sell on Instagram, like awesome. If I'm in a B2B environment, to me, a chatbot AI tool is not very useful because we lack tonality and body language. That's what I see the best AI tools have, is they have something that approximates a real human being, because most of our communication is through body language and tonality. And if we cut that out of the role play simulation, what are we role playing?
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is context is important. So your historic data, more actual conversations, adding this to our models, it can help to, bring more context to the conversation, and also the body language, like the way AI basically acts. So do you think like having this animated videos is more practical than just hearing a voice and seeing a picture or something like that, or it's just a fancy, little feature?
It really is challenging, because for certain people, like I was early stage video game. And so like I played Final Fantasy, right? I liked Final Fantasy role playing games. And I look at the Final Fantasy that I played, and they had like the cut scenes, like the little animated whatevers. And then I look at what Final Fantasy is today, and it's like watching a movie. Like, it's completely different. However, some humans don't react well to the animations, no matter how well they are. Like, you could literally put like Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck up and do a role play, and they'll be like, well, that's a cartoon, that's not a real person. So part of the framing of the AI role play is, it's not about what you see, it's about the experience. And so as long as that animation can provide realistic body language, I think it would be very effective, because ultimately most of our communication is body. Tonality is a large part, but ultimately it's a lot of body language. And what I have seen is sellers and leaders will miss body language cues. And, like, they'll be in the middle of a conversation, and all of a sudden the buyer leans in, whether it's on video or in person, or the buyer's leaning in, and all of a sudden they lean back and they cross their arms. And crossing the arms, by the way, for anyone who's listening, is not an indication that they're disinterested. They might be cold. But we miss those cues because we're just on a train track, and we're just like, I'm doing my pitch, and we're not actually watching. And so having those AI tools that can really simulate a real buyer is going to enhance the level of practice, and it's going to make that seller or that leader much better prepared for when they're in a real situation.
Very interesting. What you're saying right now is something new. I don't know even if it's possible today, but I definitely want to dig in a little bit more into that later. Because to your point, like all these little moves, or I'm bored even, or maybe I'm just tired. Like, but
Yeah.
being able to read the room and instantly react to it, or maybe react is not a good word to use, but basically asking a question, hey, it seems like I'm doing a horrible job, and you seem very bored. So I guess there's extreme value in this for sure.
Totally. Can we have the one where the AI tool like literally looks away and is like typing an email? Like, can we have those kinds of things? The other part of it, and what we teach our clients, is respond instead of react. If we're reacting, we're usually coming from a script. Whereas if we respond, we take that extra beat to actually probably come back with a question to clarify. The other thing, and I'm a huge fan of Extended Disc. Extended Disc North America has been a Sandler partner for a number of years, and being able to adapt your communication style. So DIS&C, and we're not going to go into what DIS&C means today, but ultimately every buyer that we interact with has a different communication style. They have a different way of consuming the world. And so if I, as a seller, and by the way, we're all tuned into WIIFM, right? What's in it for me? So we tend to communicate in the way that we like to receive information. So I'm a 30,000 foot and bottom line guy, right? Everything in the middle, that's what I hire a team for, because I know that it's not my area of specialty and it fries my brain. However, if I'm talking to a chief financial officer, highly likely that they are a detail-oriented individual. And if I come in with my 30,000 foot and bottom line pitch, that detail-oriented buyer is going to be like, yeah, this sounds like a bunch of fluff and nonsense, get out. So having that AI that can actually adapt to different communication styles and allow me to practice adapting, because that is really challenging in any context, right? Think about going out on a date and I'm 30,000 foot bottom line and I'm going on a date with someone who's massively detail oriented or is more reserved as a communicator than I am. I'm probably going to blow up that date in the first 5 minutes if I don't adapt to the way that they like to be communicated.
That resonates a lot. I have an actually personal story for this. I started in, I don't know, sales about a decade ago. And I remember they had this trainer and said, always be energetic and smile and go on calls. And sure, not a problem. And we were selling to CTOs. Just imagine that. I'm on a call, all bubbly and happy. And the guy is just like, what are we talking about here? Just one tiny part. I was like, oh man, all this like jokes and being super hyped, it's not going to help here. So then your point is absolutely correct. And it's not only about, knowing the buyer persona in terms of what they want to hear, but understanding the psychology behind like, okay, who am I even speaking to as a human being in front of me? Do they want to hear the details or do they just want, hear the big picture and the future vision? All right. Look, for those who are a big fan of manual role plays, what could they change tomorrow to get more engagement?
So I was about to say, I thought about saying this in the intro, but there's an article that may still be available online that I wrote probably 20 years ago about how role play sucks and it's awful and you should never do it. And it was because I had bad role play done to me, like I'm sure you and most of the listeners have had. So here's the number one thing for manual role plays. The leader models the salesperson first. So typically, if I'm the leader and you're the seller, I go, all right, time for role play. Michael, how about you volunteer? And Michael's like, oh God, okay, I'm going into the arena. All right, let's do this. And then I play the boogie prospect who doesn't exist, right? Or maybe I met them once when I started my sales career and I've carried around that scar tissue. And now I'm just going to dump it on you, which by the way, doesn't help anybody. It's like when I trained Muay Thai for 10 and a half years, and we would say before sparring, there are no world champions in the ring. Like we're not here to beat each other up. We're here to elevate each other. And I sparred with some very high level people and I never felt unsafe because the minute that I feel unsafe, I stop learning. And that's where a lot of leaders go sideways is they're getting their emotional needs met as opposed to elevating their team. So every leader that we work with, this is the role play format, and listeners, you can do this in under 20 minutes. So you have a scenario that's thin sliced. Another mistake that people make is they're like, we're going to role play a prospecting call. Well, no one role plays a prospecting call. Go back to your analogy about sports. What I've heard about like high-end golfers, professionals, the top golfers, they will go out and they'll hit one club for 3 hours. Every conceivable format of that one club so that they can, be in every situation. So same thing is we're going to practice what happens when a buyer says, send me some information. And we're just going to laser focus on that at every iteration. So thin slice the role play. Second thing is I will say, all right, Michael, you're the buyer. I'm you. I'm the seller. Say, send me some information. And then we role play that. It's probably going to be quick. And then I debrief. Okay, so Michael, what resonated with you? Oh, I love this bit. I love this bit. Okay, what doesn't resonate with you? Because by the way, that was my style, not necessarily yours. Like, what would you change? Oh, I would change this and this. And when you said this, I would say it this way. Sounds good, Michael. Let's do it again. I'm the leader again. And now when you say, send me some information, I use your words. Because humans do not listen to the words that come out of their mouth the first time that they speak them, usually. Right? That's why you have people say, oh, I didn't mean to say that, because they're not listening to what they're saying. So now go back in the role play. And now when we debrief, because debrief is critical, I say, so Michael, what resonated with you? Oh yeah, that made a lot of sense. That sounded really good. Yeah, because it's your stuff. I'm just saying back your stuff and now you own it. So now we flip roles. Michael, I've gone twice. I just want you to go once. Let's reverse it. Ready to go? Yes. Okay, Michael, send me some information. And then you do it. We do a quick debrief and we're done. And I will tell you from personal experience with my sellers, you can do that in under 20 minutes.
I wish I had these sessions before. Like what you're sharing right now, like honestly, you can apply this tomorrow. So you don't need fancy tools like Sell Me the Spin or anything. You can literally just change the way you actually run these sessions so you don't
Mm-hmm.
frustrate your sellers. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, Amish, maybe I'm off base here. We need to really coach the coach before getting
Yeah.
to coaching the reps, because
Mm-hmm.
what you just showed in what 1 minute, it's something that many leaders don't know and don't apply. And
Mm-hmm.
it requires a mindset, special training, so you understand not only just to break it down, you're working with the seller, and by showing it to them, say you be the actually buyer and I'll be the
Mm-hmm.
seller. So you build that safe environment that, look, first and foremost, you're starting with me. As a
Mm-hmm.
leader, you can practice with me and then we can switch. I really love this. What are your thoughts on group role play sessions? Because look, one-on-one setting is a different story. You get people in a group. So I want to hear that.
Yeah, I think group role play sessions are a complete waste of time. And it's very similar to how sales funnel review meetings are run. They are usually a complete waste of time. And one of the recurring things I say to leaders I work with is your high performers want to tell you how awesome they are, right? So my first book was on accountability. High performers, A players, want to be accountable. They want to show you how awesome they are. They don't want to sit in a meeting and listen to the B and the C players tell a bunch of stories as about why they're not performing. They want to get in, get out, and go back and continue being awesome. And so in the group role plays, you have all those dynamics that come up in a group. So you have the one person who's always going to volunteer. They may not be very good, but they're always going to volunteer, right? They're oh, yep, okay, no, Hamish, put your hand down. I know you've volunteered 17 times in a row. Just put your hand down. And or you get on the flip side, you get the person who never volunteers, right? And the minute that you're like, so Michael, would you like to role play? It's like, no, I'd like to hand in my resignation right now. If you make me role play, I'm quitting, right? And then of course, what's the value? Like if we think about a learning environment, one-on-one, as you said, it's a safe place, right? It's just the two of us. We're just one-on-one. Maybe we're recording it with a note taker or whatever for debrief, which is something I highly recommend, whether you're whether you're physically in the same space or not. And when you get in a group, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to show off to my teammates, or I'm trying to show how awesome I am. I'm not actually learning anything. All I'm doing is probably frustrating my leader, because my leader's like, yeah, that's not actually what we're here to do. Like, can you stop showing off? But you can't say, can you stop showing off in a session? Because that's not good for morale. So ultimately, leaders I've talked to have said, well, I don't have a lot of time. No, you don't want to make the time. And actually, if you followed my format, you'd have way more time because your role plays would be way more efficient. Or they're like, well, I want everybody to see what's going on. It's like, no, you're trying to get your emotional needs met because you're the type of leader you're the type of communicator who likes to perform. You like to be on stage. And so you're doing a group role play because you're assuming that everybody thinks like you, and we don't. So get rid of the group role plays, gain that time back in your calendar, and go individual, and you'll actually have higher level performance from your team.
Look, I hope people can watch this, because we share the same sentiment. I had another guest on the call, and they thought differently about groups setting, and I said, look, I
Sure.
think group role plays are toxic in nature, and I have a personal story about it. When we started in sales, obviously, like at least for me, I don't know if we call it natural or not, I could sell, but I was not a top performing rep because I was learning. You're young.
Yeah.
And I remember we got to this group role play session, and the leader just said, "Hey, Michael, let's do it." Do what?
Ah!
I have no context. I'm just 1 month in, and
Yeah.
it was so, like, the pressure was so high, because you got, let's say, 30 people sitting in a room, and we don't even know each
Yeah.
other very well. Like, it's just the beginning
Right.
of our journey in this company.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I have to handle objections back to back to back. And I'm like, Jesus, it never happens
Yeah.
in real life this way. And what you're
No.
doing is you're ruining my image in front of my colleagues, because yes, I'm going to screw
Mm-hmm.
up, but
Mm-hmm.
can you then help me get back on my feet? Because at least that one day was done. I was not doing
Yeah.
my calls. I was thinking, oh shoot, how should I even stay in this company right now? The fact that I screwed up in front of my friends. And funny
Uh-huh.
thing was, the leader, the only comment was this is a safe environment. That's okay if you screw up. Okay, let's go for the next person. Okay, what's my feedback? And can you at least send me a message after and say if I'm, okay with this? Like, give me some feedback about this.
Oh,
So to me, like honestly, based on my experience, I found it really toxic to be in a group setting and start role playing in front of people and with the potential of screwing it up. And it happens all the time.
totally. Totally. Wow, what a horrible experience. I'm sad you had that.
But it actually stuck to my mind, and I think maybe this
Yeah.
platform kind of was born out of some of these like pains that I had in my journey.
Hmm.
So, Hamish, let me ask you this. Role plays are great, no question asked.
Hmm.
But how can we really measure the efficacy of a role play, practice? Do you have a framework you can share with us?
Well, it's very challenging in this environment, Michael, because like we're not teaching someone how to install a boiler or how to fix an aircraft, right? Like, so it's soft skills, which is I think a horrible phrase, but ultimately it comes down to it's mostly qualitative, not quantitative. What we can do, and this is something that we coach our clients on, is to look at the ratios. So if we take a typical engagement cycle, right? So we have to do prospecting activities to get a conversation, and then a conversation turns into a meeting possibly turns into a demo possibly turns into a proposal, and then a proposal potentially turns into a sale. If we can just use that as a generic, right? So in between each of those are ratios. So does it take me 20 proactive prospecting attempts to have one conversation? Does it take me 10 conversations to only get one meeting? Every one of those in betweens, those ratios are coaching moments, which is code for role play. So, one of the ways to measure the efficacy in a quantitative standpoint is to look at the ratio. So, as a leader, I'm going to say, all right, let's look at Michael's ratios. Okay, where do I want to practice, and what am I hearing from him, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, right now he's great all the way up to getting the demo, and it takes him like 10 demos to get one proposal, and the company average is 5. We'll just pick it stupid simple numbers, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so what can we work on in that? And then I'm going to role play. Then I'm going to monitor over a period of time. It might be 30 days, it could be 90 days, depending on your type of sale. And I'm going to watch that ratio specifically. And I don't expect it to go from 10 to 5, but if it goes from 10 to 9, well, that's a 10% improvement. I think I'm bad at math, but I think I got that one. And so that's the quantitative side. The qualitative side is you've got to do field visits with your reps as a leader. Now, whether that's a Zoom along, I think is the current cliche, or you're going physically on site, or you're listening to recordings, or whatever that might be, because everything works if it's implemented. Right? That's the biggest challenge, right? So it's all well and good for you and I to do a role play on how to convert more demos to proposal requests. But if it doesn't change how you speak or act with your buyers, well, then it's all useless. So then what I need to go out and do is watch, are you implementing? And here's the other key thing. Coaching is not an event. A lot of leaders treat it like an event, right? I coached Michael. Michael is better now. And it's like, no, Michael's a human being. So human beings are not light switches. And so when we're working with our leaders and we're coaching them on how to coach and role play effectively, we do the role play. And at the end of the role play, it's, okay, Michael, when are you and I going to review this? Is it 2 weeks from now? Is it 4 weeks from now? I wouldn't recommend longer than 4 weeks, even if you're in a long form sales cycle, because that's going to give you time to implement and me time to get qualitative and quantitative data. That is the best way to measure the efficacy. Some of the listeners are going to be like, that sounds hard. Yes. And the other way doesn't work. So you might as well make the effort to get the quantitative and the qualitative, as opposed to just keeping your fingers crossed, having a shot of hopium, and praying that your team member gets better based on your one event-based role play session.
Coaching is not an event. This is a nice quote.
No.
Coaching is not an
Yeah.
event. You need to continuously help your people to get better. And this is your job as a leader, just to monitor them. Like sometimes like I hear,
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't have time to, to call shadows or watch call recordings. That makes sense. People are busy and all that stuff. But do you care about the result? You already invested, let's say, in a training session or a tool. And if you don't take the time to really assess whether it's working or not, and you're expecting
Mhm.
maybe your reps doing that, I think you're just setting up yourself, for failure up front. All right.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this, Hamish. Role plays are amazing. Maybe it's
Mhm.
not a thing for some organizations for whatever reason.
Mhm.
What are other practices or practice options that you find as effective as role plays?
One thing that I find really effective, and I mentioned I trained Muay Thai before, is shadowboxing. And so shadowboxing, and the audience will know this, is saying it to yourself in the mirror. Or when you're, those of you that have a commute and you're driving, people think you're talking on Bluetooth, right? It doesn't look weird anymore to talk to yourself in the car because people think that you're on a phone call. And so shadowboxing, and we are our own worst enemies, right? Our brains are wired to keep us safe, which usually means stuck. And that goes back to wherever you all believe that we came from. And so we make up the worst prospects ever in our head. And so, and like Michael Jordan said, he would go and play 1-on-0 in the gym, and he would imagine that he was being guarded by the best defender in the world. And he was like, if I can beat the best defender that my brain can come up with, I bet I can beat anybody. And same thing when we're practicing is, we can beat anybody. And I'll have this conversation with leaders because I'll get calls saying, hey, I got to have an awkward conversation with my team member who's not performing. And so we do a little bit of role play. But also I say, okay, you got to think about possible, plausible, and probable, right? Those are that's the spectrum that we're on in any sort of conversation or interaction. I said, right now you're doing the red flag, like they completely go nuclear, they scream and yell, all that, right? Like that's where your head's at. And without fail, they all say, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I said, awesome. That's possible. Based on this person, do you really think it's probable? And they're like, no, not at all. And I'll say, awesome. Now, let's just say, because it is possible that happens. Do you believe in your heart of hearts that you could handle that situation if that person goes completely off the deep end? And they're like, oh, yeah, like I can do that at all. I said, awesome. So now your brain has controlled for that. So your brain has gone, okay, good. We're safe. Let's focus on what's probably going to happen in that conversation, and let's practice that. Too many times we focus on the possible or the plausible in our role plays, and those things certainly could happen. I would rather practice what is probably going to happen because that's what's actually going to enhance my conversation, whether it's an awkward one with a team member or a difficult conversation with a client or a prospect.
What you just said reminded me of some of the requests we received from some of our enterprise clients. So they
Mm,
artificially want to get their top sellers involved in the program. And my suggestion
sure.
is don't. Just don't. Because if they're, your A players, they're bringing big numbers, they're focused, they've been in the field for 20 years, they maybe need some tiny adjustments. It's not that giving them access to some very harsh, impossible to beat role plays just to say, hey, they're using the tool as well. This is mostly must be actually used with people who are getting onboarded, or they're really struggling, or when you roll out new functionalities, you acquire companies, not for your real seasoned reps. There are a few.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, it's like based on most of our clients, I see like that 80-20 ratio is kind of like there. So why do you want to bug this like 5-10 people when you have a team of 50-60 people that really, really need help? I understand the sentiment behind it. It's just like, okay, when I have this, high performing reps actually using the tool, other people
Yeah.
will watch them and they want to be like them. But does this really worth, their time to do this, to, help you get a buy-in on a tool rather than just letting them go on field and actually perform?
Very much so. The thing with the high performing reps, especially in that enterprise space, is they still want to be awesome, right? Like again, your point about high performing athletes, they still want to level up. It's tweaking though, and that's where again a mindset of leadership is, we have to move them from here to here. It's like, no. It's matters of degree. Like it's baby steps, right? It's baby steps. My eldest daughter's baby shoes. She's 12, and she's significantly bigger than this now. So it's baby steps with them. And yes, with the onboarding ones, yeah, we do need to go from here to here because they don't know anything, right? They're being onboarded, but there's no sense. Again, going back to our conversation about safe place. And I'll use a very nerdy Star Trek reference. Like, it's no use giving them the Kobayashi Maru test to one of your senior sellers where it's impossible to get out of. And all you're going to do, to your point about your group role play, is demotivate them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And just imagine if you demotivate your A players, they're going to leave.
Right.
They're going to go to your competitor, get a job elsewhere,
Exactly.
Look, I'm going to ask my last question.
Okay.
There are a lot of coaches out there that are extremely scared of what's happening with AI. I literally have received this message yesterday from a good friend of mine, 25 years coaching great companies. And he said, I saw your LinkedIn post yesterday, and it seems like you have one-on-one coaching sessions embedded to the platform. Are you going to replace us? And I started laughing. I was like, I genuinely believe this won't happen anytime soon because, you know it better. But I want to hear it from your end. What do you think, like, in terms of role of a coach in 2 to 3 years' time with the speed of this technology advancements that we are seeing?
Yeah. So in this context, this is like an external coach, right? Someone who's hired to be a coach, not like the coach as a part of a role of a leader in an organization. So I have a recurring thing that I've said a couple of times, which is there's a statement out there that is, you will not be replaced by AI. You will be replaced by a human being who's using AI. And my response to that is, well, if we're all using AI, who's getting replaced? And what I feel is the ones who get replaced are the ones who completely abdicate their brain to AI. So AI, from my perspective, is good for 80%, right? 80%. Could it be good for 90% in the future? I can't really tell because the pace of change is so massive. I mean, sure. However, for now, anyways, we still sell to humans, right? For now, anyways. And there will always be, and I believe this to be true, there will always be a need for humans to make sense of what the data is. Like, I love AI for helping me prepare for conversations or helping me strategically plan for the growth of my own organization. AI can't synthesize that for me yet. They can take the data. They're very quick at analyzing data. They can't say, okay, well then based on this, here's this way you could go, or here's this way you could go in the real world. Yes, they can make suggestions. Well, based on this data, would you pick option A or option B? And the AI will say, well, based on what I know of your organization, you should pick option B. Well, that's great, except now there's action that has to happen. And the AIs can't take that action right now because that involves human beings interacting. And so from the role of an external coach who gets hired, I believe that there will always be value for them. Now, there will be values for those that have the ability to make sense of what the AI is bringing. Because that's why I know I hire coaches, is because I need someone external to make sense of all of the data that I have. And I remember one of my mentors, his name's Rob, and he was a marketing consultant way back when. He runs a consumer packaged goods branding company now. And he was asked by the vice president of a very large financial institution, one of the big 5 banks in Canada, why should I hire you? And he said, well, every month I read a stack of marketing books and articles that is about this big. And then I distill that information down into about this much that is actually relevant to you. Do you have the time to read this much? And the VP's like, absolutely not. Let's move forward. Well, now the AI has the ability to much more and distill it down into what's useful. And then we can take the action. So if the coaches in the future are just going, well, AI said to do this. Well, awesome. I don't need you because I can do that on an AI. But if the coach is like, hey, based on what I know of you, based on what the AI is giving us, there's a few different paths that we can take. Here's the pros and cons. Here's how we might implement the human side of it, supported by the technology, which is in this case the AI. So I believe coaches that can actually bring real insights to their clients will always have a place at the table. Those that are just going through the motions and spitting out what anybody can find with a quick 5 minutes on an AI platform are going to go away.
I love this. So, Hamish, how should they get ready for the future?
Well, if they are thinking about getting replaced, I would start asking their clients what are the real insights that their clients are looking for, because there's probably a short-term relationship happening. They may want to connect with a process or a system or an organization that has some a long-term track record, because what will be challenging in the future is those coaches who go out and like, well, I was an operations manager for 20 years and so I'm going to go out and coach operations managers. Like, well, all of that's just what's in your head, and eventually that runs out if you're not developing yourself. And that's where I feel coaches who brand themselves as experts, this is a Hamish thing. I loathe the word expert. Like when I'm introduced as an expert, I actually usually ask the presenter to not introduce me as an expert, because in my mind, and I've seen this borne out, and there's actually a few books that I've read on this topic as well. When someone claims to be an expert, they actually stop learning. They actually lock in their brain and they go, I'm an expert, so I don't need to do this anymore. So I actually like the legal profession, and I've done some work with lawyers in supporting them in their business development activities. They are not allowed to use the word expert in Canada. They are allowed to say that they have expertise. And I love the word expertise because to me, it means that it's not finite, that there's still more to learn and there's still more to gain. And I tell my clients, I love being wrong, because if I'm wrong, I have an opportunity to learn something. And I encountered several coaches at networking events who did not like to be wrong. And in fact, they were incredibly convinced that they were right in all cases. And they had no problem telling me, even though I wasn't a buyer of their services. So coaches, get prepared by loosening your mindset and understanding that you have to be on a journey just as much as your clients. I had a client years ago who was a manager at Xerox who we were having a quarterly review, and they said, hey, you get to pick your clients. And I said, yeah, I do. But who doesn't want to hang out with a bunch of smart, ambitious, driven, goal-oriented individuals every week? Like, you guys make me better, because if I'm not continually leveling up, you're going to leave me. And they're like, yeah, you're right.
I love it. So the message is simple but very clear. Keep learning. Keep adapting to what's happening out there. Not only AI, you just give an example about your clients. You learn from other people too. So they can always share insight. So stop thinking that you are an expert who's arrived and there's no more learning left, and just be open to learning and be getting better. Hamish, I appreciate you a lot. I really enjoyed this conversation. So last question. I already asked my last question, but if someone wants to reach out to you and work with you, first and foremost, can they, and how?
So always happy to have a conversation. Not necessarily a good fit to work with every organization. And certainly right now our typical engagement is with an organization that's got at least a 7-figure revenue growth that they can see and they're not sure how to get to. And they're willing to invest $275,000 to $325,000 over at least every year for at least 3 years to get there. Bad fit buyers go, that's a lot of money. Good fit buyers go, well, that sounds like 2 to 3x return, and growth isn't linear. So if I actually implement, I'm probably going to get significantly farther ahead than that. So happy to have a conversation with literally anybody, even if they don't fit that model, that we might have an opportunity to support them. There are not many Hamish Knoxes in North America, so I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. And if you Google Hamish and Calgary or Hamish and Sandler, I'll probably pop up. My website is go.sandler.com/Hamish, which is HAMISH. So any of those ways that you want to reach out to me. If you do choose to reach out on LinkedIn or through the contact us page on my website, please mention that you heard me on Michael's podcast, because you're probably not surprised. I do get a lot of inbound requests. And if I just get the generic, like, I'd like to add you to my network, I usually ignore those. So if you're like, hey, I listened to your pod with Michael, want to have a conversation, happy to talk to you.
Amazing. All right. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you learned something new today, and we see you soon. Cheers. Bye for now.